Welcome to Inner Healing Ministry. Thank you so much for choosing to watch this particular teaching on domestic violence uh, in Christian families. Domestic violence in Christian families. So we want to start by identifying what domestic violence is. So, what is domestic violence? Now, domestic violence, also called domestic abuse, it takes many forms. We will begin to look at the many forms of domestic violence. For example, what are those types of domestic violence? So we have control, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse and intimidation, isolation, verbal abuse, coercion, threats, and even blame, using male privilege, and even economic abuse. All those are types of domestic violence. So it can take many forms. Another thing we identify is that it can affect men, women, teenage girls and boys, or even children. So domestic violence can affect literally everybody within a family. It happens when one person is using any kind of means to put down another person, or they're using any means to control the other person. So when somebody is using any means to put down the other person or to control the other person, that is how domestic violence begins to happen. So domestic violence is about power and control. Abusers behave abusively to control their partner's behavior, thereby achieving and maintaining power over their partners and getting their own needs and desires met quickly and completely. So in other words, domestic violence is about exerting power and control over the other person. Why? Because the person who is doing this whole thing of domestic violence, what they're looking for is to have their needs and desires met quickly and completely. So violence is a learned behavior. People learn to be violent. It's a learned behavior, and abusers choose to use violence. So it is not something that somebody cannot stop. No, the abusers choose to use violence because violence is a learned behavior. So the victim is not part of the problem. The victim may accept responsibility for causing the abuser to lose their temper, but the truth is that the abuser must be held accountable for his behavior. So many times the victim feels like, if I had been a little bit better, if I did not do what I did, maybe this person wouldn't have reacted the way they have reacted. But the reality is that the victim is not part of the problem. The victim may accept responsibility for causing the abuser to lose their temper, but the truth is that the abuser must be held accountable for his behavior. The abuser cannot continue blaming the victim because of their behavior. So domestic violence is a major public health problem in that it affects millions of people and often results in physical and emotional injuries and sometimes even deaths. So it is a major public health problem. Now let's go back to what we had seen a little bit earlier. What are the types of domestic violence? So when the general public thinks about domestic violence, they usually think in terms of physical assault that results in visible injuries to the victim. When somebody says so and so is going through domestic violence, a majority of people will begin to look for physical assault, any kind of visible injury. So if they do not see visible injuries, many will tend to conclude that there is no violence go on. So this is only one type of abuse, physical assault, physical abuse. It's only one type of abuse. There are several categories of abusive behavior, each of which has its own devastating consequences. For example, let's look at control. Control is a type of domestic violence. So now, looking at control, not many people will be able to see it, but the person who's going through this kind of violence, they know the pain they go through, they know how it affects them. The general public may not know it, may not see it, but the person going through it can see it clearly, and they suffer the pain, just like the person who's going physical abuse. So controlling behavior is a way for the abuser to maintain dominance over the victim. The controller believes that they are justified in the controlling behavior. For example, the controller might have this kind of a behavior of checking the mileage on the odometer following their use of the car, so that they can now tell the victim that you can no longer use the car because the last time you spent this much, the last time you went this far, and so on. So they keep checking just to make the victim feel like they don't have control. And this controller, by checking the mileage and all that, after the victim using their car, they want the victim to feel that they are the one who are dominating. They're the ones who are dominants in terms of how the car is used. Monitoring phone calls using caller ID or other number monitoring devices, not allowing their victim to make or receive phone calls. I have met people during my counseling work who are married to spouses who will not allow them to use their phone freely. And a cell phone is supposed to be a personal gadget, but you will find this controller wanting to check how much data they have used to try and dominate even their handling and their usage of their phone. And they are not allowed to receive phone calls. The controller wants to keep checking. They can even keep tracking that phone. They can use some devices to monitor how that phone is being used. Those are controlling behaviors. Another one is that not allowing their freedom of choice in terms of clothing styles or even hairstyle. And this may even include forcing the victim to dress in a specific way, such as more seductively or more conservatively than they are comfortable with. So we have this kind of controllers. It's a kind of abuse, because this person has no freedom of choice. They cannot choose the kind of clothes that they want to wear. They cannot choose the hairstyle they want to have. They cannot choose how they are going to express themselves in terms of their clothing. They are forced to dress in a particular way, and it causes them to feel totally controlled and emotionally abused sometimes. Another way of controlling, which is a form of violence, is calling or coming home unexpectedly to check up on the victim. And this may initially start as what appears to be a loving gesture, but it becomes a sign of jealousy or possessiveness. That this person comes home without even saying they are coming home, just to check where their victim is and what their victim is doing. It begins like, oh, I just wanted to check how you are. I just missed you and I thought, let me just come and check how you are and what you're doing. But it is not love. It's just a form of control. It is a sign of jealousy and possessiveness, and it can begin to become very uncomfortable to the victim. Another form of control is invading the victim's privacy by not allowing time and space of their own. Invading the victim's privacy by not allowing time and space of their own. That the person cannot be somewhere all by themselves. That if you want to go and spend some time in the bedroom, maybe resting, after a few minutes, this controller comes in just to check what is going on. When you go to the sitting room, you want to watch something on the television, the controller leaves the bedroom and follows you just to check what you're doing, invading the victim's privacy. Another form of control is forcing or encouraging their dependency by making the victim to believe that they are incapable of surviving or performing simple tasks without the abuser or on their own. This is where there is a lot of codependency. And it is the controller who makes the victim to feel like, you cannot go to the market alone. I need to go with you so that I can help you make some decisions on what to buy. Those kind of things. Making the other person to feel like they are not capable of surviving on their own. That they need the abuser to be right there with them to help them do some of those simple tasks. And they make the victim believe that you cannot do it on your own. I need to be there to help you. And it is not help. They're just keeping a watch. They're keeping an eye on this person that they want to control. Another form of control is using the children to control the victim parent by using children as spies. These are some things that we have seen happening in some families, that children are made to spy on their mom or their dad. And it is a form of control. So that when the controller comes, they can be able to say confidently to the victim that you were doing ABCD. And the victim is left wondering, how did you even know? So when the victim realizes that the children are being used as spies, then the victim is never comfortable in their own home. That is a form of abuse. Control is a form of abuse. Another form of abuse is physical. This is what many people know. When there is physical abuse, it's almost like many people can know about it. For example, physical abuse is any physically aggressive behavior, for example, withholding of physical needs, indirect physically harmful behavior, or even threat of physical abuse. For example, somebody who is a controller would begin to withhold things aggressively. And then they can also begin to harm the person in an indirect way, in a way that people will not see an injury. And sometimes they will threaten that they will hurt the person physically, just to intimidate them so that they can be under their control. Some of those aggressive behaviors include hitting the person, kicking, biting, slapping, shaking. For example, shaking is an indirect physical harmful behavior. Pulling, punching, choking, beating, scratching, pinching, pulling of hair, stabbing, shooting, drowning, burning, hitting with an object, threatening with a weapon, or threatening to physically assault a person. All those are things that we can put in that category of physical abuse. Withholding of physical things includes things like interruption of sleep or meals, denying money, food, or even denying them transportation or help if the person is sick or injured, locking the victim into or out of the house, refusing to give or rationing necessities. For example, refusing to give, let's say for example, food. Like for example, if it is dinner time, the abuser says, no, we don't have enough. We will only take one meal, lunch only, no dinner. Rationing necessities like milk. No, you cannot take milk. We only have this much. We will use that for breakfast. Rationing or even refusing to give the person things that they need. Rationing necessities. Another kind of physical abuse is abusing, injuring, or threatening to injure others like children, pets, or special property. Those kind of things. Another one is forcible physical restraint against the victim's will, being trapped in a room or having the exit blocked, or even being held down, that you are forced to remain somewhere. You're restrained from going out, from doing what you wanted to do. You want to go to visit a friend, you are restrained. You wanted to go to church, you are restrained against your will. So the abuser hitting or kicking walls, doors, or other inanimate objects during an argument, throwing things in anger, destruction of property. I've had cases where many couples have, one person, the abuser specifically, who picks the phone and crashes it or hits the television and shatters it into pieces, kicking the walls and doors, breaking objects in the house during an argument. Abusers have those kind of behaviors, and then holding the victim hostage. So all those things that we have talked about there, they can actually keep the victim in hostage. They are unable to do whatever they wanted to do. They are restrained. So in my next episode, we will look at another type of abuse. Actually, we will look at sexual abuse, and we will see how that also is a form of violence within a family. Now, these things happen in Christian families. When they are happening in families where people do not know God, you would say maybe if they knew Christ, things would be different. But when these things are happening in a Christian family, you're left wondering, what is the problem? Do we have a way out? So we will continue with this subject, and I'm sure we will get to see the way out. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.